The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the wild within.
1993. I was fulfilling a dream of mine. I joined the Coast Guard so I could get to Alaska. And I ended up in Kodiak, Alaska. And on this day, we were filling some of our deer tags. Now, in Kodiak, you could shoot one deer on the road system, which is a pretty small little system. I mean, actually, it's a lot of room to go hunt, but there weren't very many roads. So I'd already fulfilled one of my deer in the road system, and then I think you could shoot two others or three others, I couldn't remember exactly which, off the road system. And that season would go clear into December 31st. So we were out. There was a guy that I was with. He was actually my boss at the Coast Guard, and he fed his family with all the stuff that he harvested, whether it was salmon or deer or moose or caribou. They never bought any meat, and so I think he was pretty interested in having me along because I had 2 or 3 more deer tags, and I can't remember exactly how many we had to fill. But he had me along, and he fed me a lot and kept me at his house and took me out hunting and just kind of took care of me. So I made sure that those tags would go to the cause, right? The food cause. And so we decided that we were going to take off. We would be gone just on the 24th. And we wouldn't miss Christmas Day. He had kids at home, and we didn't want to miss opening presents and things like that. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Kodiak, Alaska, but Kodiak, Alaska has a mind of its own. And it wasn't supposed to blow. I mean, there was a storm coming in. You know, it is December. But the storm wasn't supposed to come in from the south. So we were going to Uniacke Bay. I don't think that's how you say it, but it's just outside the road system. So you could go to the edge of the road system, cross the bay, and then you're out of the road system. And so you can start hunting those deer that are outside the road system. And so we would go there, and we had a 14-foot Zodiac with a 35-horse, I think it was an Evinrude on it or something like that. But it was kind of concealed bay in there, and it doesn't get, I mean, it could be blowing on the other side of the island 60 miles per hour, and you still just get little rollers in the bay, 3-footers or whatever, little things, stuff that you could get on and off the beach with. And that's what you have to have if you're going to hunt. If you're going to hunt that kind of hunting, you have to be able to get on the beach, because you cannot shoot out of a boat. You just can't do it. They don't allow it. So you could use the boat just to transport you, and that's what we did. And I don't know if you guys have ever been around Alaska very much, or heavy weather or heavy seas, but those little 14-foot Zodiacs will take a ton, and I mean a ton of water. I've been in one where the bottom of the boat was just full of water. I mean, clear up to almost the gunnels, and the thing's still going. We'd have to pull the plug out and try to get it on plane and pull all the water out. That's the reason we had those up in Alaska. They would do just about anything you asked of them. They were tough little boats. The only problem you had with them is if you only had one person, all the gear would tend to work its way to the back, and then you'd be back heavy, and you going through the surf to land on the beaches. It really was tough. We turned one over, actually, and lost a bunch of guns up there, but guns and people had to swim into the shore, and it was just not a fun time. But they were real seaworthy if a guy knew what they were doing with them. So we decided we're going to go out. We had to get this done. I can't remember. I think we had to get underway or something like that pretty soon. So we had to get the meat in. We had to fill out the rest of those tags. That way we could fill our freezer. So we decided, well, we'll just go out the one day. We'll be back. He assured his wife, we'll be back, which meant nothing to her, because she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I know better. This is Alaska. There are times when you don't come back when you say you're going to. And back then, we didn't have cell service or anything like that. The only thing we did have was a two-way radio, but it didn't reach back to her. So anyhow, we went across, and it wasn't bad. I mean, it was some mellow rollers in there, 10-footers, and at the beaches they didn't really break on the beaches the way that the rollers were coming in, because they had to come around the point to come in, so they were breaking pretty heavy over on the other points. But you could get in behind the lee. It's kind of looks like a snake head or something in there, and you could get behind that snake head where it would curve around there, and shoot at the beach there. You just time the waves and you get into a couple feet. It wasn't anything real bad, so you just time that, get in, let that last wave push you on the beach, and then jump out and pull the raft up on the beach, and it worked out pretty well. So we did that. We got to the beach. There was two boats, 4 people. And Randy was the guy's name that took me across, and I don't quite remember that. I just met him that day, and they were carpenters from out of Haines, and I don't quite remember exactly what their name was, but they were with us, and they had a 14-foot Zodiac as well, and I don't remember the horsepower rating, but we got in there, and it was, for the most part, a pretty nice day. And we could sit at the beach, and you could look. And if you looked up towards the head of the bay, there were some huge mountains that shot up out at the head of the bay. And up on top of those mountains, there was, it's starting to get a lot of snow up there. But it hadn't really pushed it all the way down yet. For some reason, we hadn't got into the big snows yet of the year up there that year. There was a little bit of snow on the beaches and stuff, but it wasn't like, what you think of Alaska or what I've seen in Kodiak at times. And then we sat on the beach there, and we spotted off the beach. We just kept looking around, and we found several deer. If you look at Kodiak, Alaska, it's got some real high peaks, and then it's got rollers, and then it's got these ridge lines that run up to the high peaks. And you get on top of the ridge lines, and it kind of mellows out. The ground mellows. Down in the bottoms, those are all alders, really thick, brushy alder stuff. And then you try to climb out of those. You get up on the ridge lines, and you can look on both sides, and you can look down in the alders. Or you could look, up on the high ridges, which were like rocky, the mountain goat stuff. Or doll sheep, actually, up there. The doll sheep was pretty much what we saw. But anyhow, the deer were just running around the edges of that alder because they get in there for cover, and then they'd come out and eat on those ridge lines. So we were sitting there, the 4 of us, looking at deer and looking at the different ridge lines. And these ridge lines are, I mean, as a young guy, they didn't seem that bad. But now that I look back on it, they're not bad by any means, but they run forever, and they're isolated, and there's nothing. It's not like you could go hunt a ridgeline and then get back to your car, turn on the heater, and warm up. If you get cold up there. Most everything I hunted in was like hip boots. I think that was probably one of the saving graces of hunting Alaska, was especially in the snow, because, man, you're on the coast and that snow is just super wet. It's never really that dry, powdery stuff. Maybe right at the first, but then it just gets nasty wet. So we always kind of hunted in the extra tough high boots or the extra tough hip boots, and we were sitting down there. Glassing up there and picking out our ridges, because each one of us decided we're going to go on a different ridge, and so we decided that's what we're going to do. And I picked my ridge out. I saw a few deer on it, and I wasn't really worried about getting any big bucks or anything. I killed a fairly nice Sitka blacktail off the road system, and so I was just really out there to help Randy get some meat down and get his freezer full. But we sat there, and I picked my ridge, and I decided, well, that's where I'm going. And Randy picked his ridge, and he kind of picked the ridge. I was 23 at the time, and they were probably close to their 40s. So he was kind of looking out after me. He knew I was by the time I was 23, I've done quite a bit in my life, and so he knew that. But at the same time, I was 23. So he picked the ridge that was kind of adjacent to me, I think, so he could keep an eye on me, make sure that I didn't get off course or something like that. and then the other two went off on their way. I'll never forget. It was pretty amazing country. And I start off on the ridge, and I'm down through the alders. And by this time, most of the bears were away. You know, they were in their dens or whatever. So I wasn't too worried about bears. But the alder brush was just horrible. And I'll never forget trying to get through it. And then, of course, the bears are always in the back of your mind because there could be bears out. There really could be bears out. So that was always in the back of my mind. And I don't know. It's one of those things where you pick through the alder brush. You can't see very far in front of you. Bears are on your mind. Rabbits are going out making all sorts of noise. And you're just trying to get up to the ridge. After what seemed like, probably an hour and a half, I finally broke out of the alders and got up on top, started making my way up the ridge. And there were ptarmigan everywhere. And some of them were white, some of them were still brown. They were still changing. I don't know if that's a normal thing, but I remember seeing, kind of that color phase going on, and got up on the ridge line and spotted my first deer. I went over there, and I thought it gave me the slip because it jumped right back down in the alders, and I'm like, I'm not going back down there. I've seen plenty of deer up on the ridge line, and there's a good trail up here. I'm just going to stick it out up here. But I got past, and as I got past, that little sucker came out and started coming back up the hill, and I think it was going up there to feed. There was a lot on some of these southern exposures. There was less snow, and some of the grass and stuff was coming out, so they were eating on that, and they were eating on the edges of those alders. Anyhow, that deer came out, and it was not, I just had passed it, and it wasn't probably 15 yards from me. And I turned, and I had a 338 Win Mag, and I turned, and it was looking right at me, and I bet you it was within 30 yards easily. And I put those crosshairs right between its eyes and shot it. And it was a little doe, and it went down. I mean, it was a full-size doe, but and I say little. It was blacktail. I was used to mule deers, but it wasn't little. Those deer may be short and squatty, but this deer specifically had like an inch and a half of fat on it. And most all the deer that I shot up there were like that. They most all had that big fat layer, unless it was a buck that was, rutting really hard. They all pretty much had that fat layer. That's why I shot a lot of does, man. I mean, that meat surrounded by that fat was just amazing. So, anyhow, I had this deer down. Had to go back down through the alders. I cleaned it up right there. Kind of made a deer backpack that Randy used to do with those deer. He'd cut the legs and then run the back legs up, and then he'd put the front legs through and then tie the front legs. You'd tie them up and you'd run them through the tendon, that little tendon back there where you normally hang them, and then you just kind of make a backpack out of them and you pack them back down the hill. Again, you guys, Kodiak, Alaska, people talk about brown bears and how scary it can be and stuff like that. And here we are putting these deer on our back. And I was a little leery of it at first, but he assured me it was no big deal. And I trusted him because, we went salmon fishing a lot right around the bears, and he knew bears pretty well. We only had to shoot one of them when it crossed the creek to try to. It faked us a few times. They do like a fake charge or a bluff charge. And it did that a couple times, and his rule was if it comes all the way across the creek and just doesn't stop in the middle, then it's probably going to create some problems down the road. So we only carried our bear tags for that reason. I really didn't want to hunt them. A lot of guys love to hunt those Kodiak bears. I was not into it. But anyhow, so I trusted him. He knew bears pretty well, so I trusted him, and I did that. It took me quite a little while to get that taken care of, but I was the first one back down to the beach that evening after, it was all said and done. And those days are pretty darn short in December up in Alaska. They're really darn short. So I was down there sitting at the rafts, and I've tried to round up some driftwood. and start a fire there on the beach. But I couldn't, man, it was just so wet, and it was blowing, like the storm was starting to come in a little bit harder. It was raining, but it wasn't that rain. It was kind of a blow rain. It wasn't like some of those sheets of rain that you used to get up there. It was kind of that blowing rain. And I'm sitting there, and I had my Coast Guard immersion suit or Mustang suit on. And so I wasn't in bad shape or anything. But it was cold, and I didn't have anything to do. I was sitting there, and I started looking up on the all of the big peaks that were up above these ridges, these rolling ridges, and man, there were sheep all over up there. And I had a sheep tag in my pocket, and I thought to myself, man, I'd go after those, but that's just way too much. And now, I'm 50 years old, sitting here thinking to myself, I would give anything to be able to go back up to Alaska and go after sheep and the moose and the caribou that I had. You go in, buy your license, and you get these tags, right? And I was treated as a resident being in the military. I didn't have my subsistence license yet, but Randy had his, and so that's how we did a lot of things. We were gill netting salmon all summer long to fill up his pantry, and then once we got his pantry filled up, then we'd start fishing for him with a rod and line. But it was just an amazing thing, and I took it all for granted as a young guy. I didn't realize how amazing it was to live a lifestyle like that. So we're sitting on the beach, or I'm sitting on the beach. I'm waiting for these guys to get back, and it's starting to get dark. And so the first one of the carpenters was the first guy. Man, I cannot remember their name to save my life. But he started coming back, and he was dragging a deer back, and it was a pretty nice little buck. And he drug, if you drag bucks by their horns, then you're going with their hair. You can't hardly drag them the other direction. I don't know if you guys have drugged much mini deer or not, but it's hard to drag them against their hair. So if you shoot a buck and drag him with his horns, you're going with the hair. And
Hunting Southern Oregon, the Life Outdoors radio show on Gold Country Radio with Nate Bailey. Keep it tuned right here for more ways to perfect your craft. Coming up next, Wake the Wild Within.
Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally and beyond.
The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the Wild Within.
He was coming in, and he had one antler in his hand, and the other one, he still had a hold of the deer. It was still on the deer, but he was dragging it by that one. The one popped off. The deer were getting ready to lose their antlers, and by just dragging it, he popped off that one antler. And so he kept switching between arms, and by the time he got back, and he's like, son, that was a drag. And he showed me where he shot it, and it was a long ways up there. More than what we were thinking, we were going to have to deal with. But so anyhow, he set his deer by mine, and he said, "You shot a doe?" And I said, "Heck yeah, I shot a doe. That's kind of what we're up here for, right?" And he said, "Well, at least try to shoot some small bucks or something, but try to leave some of those does for breeding." A lot of them were already bred too, so he was just trying to tell me, I should be shooting the bucks. But so about another hour was gone by. It was really pretty dark by then. Randy shows up and the other carpenters show up, and we're all sitting around there, and we all have a lot of gear. And I'm like, hey guys, aren't we going back across? And It started blowing in there, and the waves were probably 15 foot tall, and they're breaking on the beach at least 10 foot. And Randy's like, we're not going back across. There's no way. I said, but you're going to miss Christmas morning. And he's like, that's the way it is, man. And he says, well, where's your bag? And I said, bag? And he looks at me and goes, what did you have in your bag? And I said, well, I didn't bring like any food or anything. He said, you didn't bring any food? And I said, no. I said, I thought we were going back across. He says, you never, ever, ever, ever assume that you're going to make it back across. And this ain't Oregon. That's what he said. I remember to this day. This isn't Oregon. You got to have food with you, enough food to get you by for a while, because the weather could come in and you're going to be stuck there for a while. And he says, well, you brought your sleeping bag, didn't you? And I said, no, I didn't bring a sleeping bag. And he just looked at me, and he kind of was disappointed in himself too, because he's kind of my mentor up there. But he figured that I would know this stuff. And so I didn't have a sleeping bag. I didn't have, all I had pretty much was what I was hunting in. And in my bag, I had, like a rain jacket and some other stuff in there, but it wasn't anything to keep me really warm. So all of them were kind of disgusted with me. I'll never forget. They're all in their 40s. All of them, the two guys from Haines have lived up there their whole life. Randy had been in there, lived in Kodiak itself for 20 years. And they all were like, oh man, we got this new guy with us, and this is not cool. So I said, I'll be all right, you guys. It's not a big deal. Where are we going to sleep? And they said, we'll just flip over the rafts and we'll sleep under the rafts. So they started pulling the engines off and of course nobody was really ready to go to bed yet. And Randy had some antifreeze with him, some Jack Daniels antifreeze. So we sipped on that for a little bit and then decided, we should build a fire and warm up before we flip and get underneath those rafts, because you get nice and warm and then you get under the raft and you'll keep some of that heat in. And so we started trying to build a fire on the beach, and it was just not working out, man. I mean, it was just plain not working out. And so we were doing that. We were, it took us an hour probably trying to build this fire. Finally, Randy had some paper plates in his bag, and he took them out and put it on the fire and started it up, put on the wood that we had gathered there that we thought was going to be a fire, and it caught on fire and blew off into the tules that were right next to the beach. The whole beach had probably 120 acres or so of tules there before it started getting into the alders. It's where a little creek came out, and that blew into those tules and started the tules on fire. And we're like, oh, well, that'll work. So for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, we followed that fire all around in those tules, and it just kept moving all over in the tules. Finally ended up burning that whole section of tules out. But we got nice and warm, and the guys divvied up some of their clothing. I got a hat off of one of them. I got some Mickey Mouse boots off the other, and a pair of mittens off the other, and then I don't remember what all, like a wool shirt to put underneath from another, and then they had their sleeping bags, of course, because they knew better. And so we flipped the rafts over, and I don't know if I've ever slept so well in my life. I slept really good. And next morning, we flip them back over, and I'm asking everybody, well, how'd you guys sleep? How'd you sleep? And they said, I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep at all. And I said, well, what's wrong with you guys? How come you couldn't sleep out here? I was asleep. And they said, yeah, you were sleeping like a baby. And they said, well, you're snoring so loud, you kept us all awake. And I was freezing. My feet were cold because I didn't have my boots, and my head was cold because I didn't have my hat. And so from that day on, every time I saw those guys or every time I was around, I never was able to shake that story. And I learned a lot. There's these things that I learned a lot. And the reason I tell you this story, you guys, is because I think we've lost some of this in our society. I think we've lost this man camaraderie, or kind of this journeyman type mentorship. in our society, and I know we've lost it in hunting. I know that we. One of the things that I know for a fact is, you listen to these guys talking about old guys and just a bunch of old camaraderies or whatever, and the new crowd's taking over, and those old guys don't have much to share, and this and that. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because of that. There is a lot to be said about somebody who has a lot of experience out in the woods, outdoors, and we have lost that in the society. We've made it to where people's feelings get hurt real easy. Those guys made fun of me a lot because of the way that I wasn't prepared and those kind of things. And I'll tell you what, those lessons stuck with me. And not only did it do that, but it also gave me this sense of a thicker skin where not everybody was out to get against me. It was my own dumb move to not be prepared. It was really stupid on my part to not be prepared. I should have known better. And those are the kind of lessons that you learn by getting out and doing this stuff around guys that have done it before. And it does something to create inside of you a complete different idea of what you can and can't do. Now, I'm not saying that you could do everything. That's not what I'm implying here. But what I am saying is most people can do way more than what they think they can. I'm still in the Air Guard. Every year we have to do our PT test. I'm 51 years old, and I'm still out running and out doing, and I'm not in good shape right now. I am in horrible shape. And that's kind of what brought this podcast on as I started thinking about this is as we're doing our PT test, I'm watching these 20, 25, 26-year-old people struggle to pass their PT test. And I'm 50 years old that's not in good shape. And it's not because they're not in good physical shape. It's because they're mentally, something mentally. And I'm not saying everybody here, you guys. I'm just saying that there are people, and I think there's a trend of that happening. And I think a lot of it has to do with probably broken families, not men in the house, the advent of video games where guys can, go find adventure in this figment of their imagination rather than living out adventure. Adventure costs a lot of things, you guys. You got to understand, adventure is going to cost you. It's really sucks at times. It hurts at times. It really hurts. Sometimes it hurts so much you lose things over it. And I think we're losing that in this culture. In the American male culture, we don't allow them from the time that they get into kindergarten. We don't allow males to be males. We're trying to groom them into being good men or nice men. And don't get me wrong, you should be good, you should be nice. But the fact of the matter is that idea is something that makes them more feminine and makes them look a little bit different than what manhood should be. This whole Will Smith thing has really upset me. One, he should have been man enough to be able to take what Chris Rock said, and two, Chris Rock should understand that if he opens his mouth like that, he might get smacked over it. Now, the whole thing about that was both parties in this situation, both of them, were acting completely like boys. Now, there was a day when men stood up for women and really stood up for them. It wasn't some kind of act or wasn't some kind of show or it wasn't being directed by something other than the fact that it was wrong. And we in America have brainwashed people to the point where they think that there is nothing to stand up for. There's nothing to fight for. In schools nowadays, if somebody gets in a fight, both parties were wrong. That's not true. That is not what is true. There is always a problem. There's always something that has to be done when evil abounds. When evil or something wrong has been done, it should be stopped. And I'm not saying every time it's a fist fight. What I am saying is it should be stopped. And that is a position that we've been placed in. And I know this does not sit well in this world. I know it doesn't. But we need more of it. And the way that we get back, that's why I'm so big. That's why here at the Life Outdoors, that's the biggest reason that we have actually started doing anything. Putting any kind of content out is because we want to advance this. We want to advance the idea that men were created to be good, and that requires something of them. If you're going to be a good man, it requires something of you. Sometimes it requires you to stand up and fight for something. Sometimes it requires you to shut up and allow it to happen. But it does require you something. And I think that we're losing that idea about manhood. And, if you look at any commercial nowadays that has a family in it, it's always the man that's the stupid guy in the family, even stupider than the kids. And we need to stop that. We need to make that not look the way it is. And I'll tell you the reason is because a good, strong, dangerous man is really dangerous to the evil that we see going on in the world. And the way we base that, of course, is off what Christ did. Of course, that's how we base manhood, true manhood. And it's also a problem because Christ and the way that he is has been washed down through the pulpits of our churches for years. If you really read the Bible for who Christ is and what he's done, he is so absolutely dangerous and strong at the same time that we take that for granted, and we make him out to be some kind of hippie who wouldn't stand up for anything, and that is the exact opposite of who he is. So, with that said, that's the reason we brought this podcast on. Is I didn't want to toot my own horn. I wasn't trying to do that. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to. I know there's a lot of young guys. If you look at who listens to podcasts, it's a lot of younger guys. The Life Outdoors wants to bring you guys and tell you that you can do this stuff. That just because you grew up in a school system that told you can't jump off of the jungle gym, you can't stand up for what is good, you can't do all the things that something inside of you is pushing you to do. I'm here to tell you can. That's what you're created for. That's what you're here for. Now you gotta make sure that you're regulating that against good. But you can be dangerous, you can be adventurous, you can stand up for the right thing. And I know that you guys, at this age group, I know you guys have been beat up over this. Maybe you came from a single-parent home. Maybe your mom needed you to be more like a female because it was easier to take care of while she was working because your dad wasn't there. Maybe you spent too much time in a school system that told you that you can't stand up for the right thing. Maybe you were even told that being strong was wrong. I'm telling you, those are all lies of the devil, because a strong man is a dangerous man. And a dangerous man is what the devil doesn't want. Because a dangerous man can take care of the evil that's going on in this world. So I say all that to try to motivate you guys. Try to motivate people. Get out there. Do this stuff. Get a hold of a mentor. Check out the Life Outdoors. We give you guys a bunch of stuff to try to get you guys motivated to get out there and do this stuff. Follow, your favorite channels on YouTube. Look and see if there are genuine people out there trying to do genuine things. And the nice thing about this is, you guys, is you can become what you didn't think that you were. And every man, the biggest problem that every man has is wondering whether or not they're worth it, whether or not they're worthy of manhood. And you see a lot of boys out there trying to prove themselves, but the fact of the matter is you don't have to prove anything. You are that. Just start living it. And that's what the Life Outdoors is all about. Hopefully this gets you guys motivated. If you guys need help with anything, if you guys need help getting out, you know how to get a hold of me. I also have some free elk hunting courses to get you going. And I'm going to continue doing that because I think I've taken a lot of things for granted, like how to read a topo map. I bet you there's a bunch of people listening to this right now that don't know how to read a topo map. And I take that stuff for granted. I've been doing it since I was a little kid. And so I take a lot of this stuff for granted. One of the things you could do also is ask questions. A true man will ask questions. If I would have asked questions about, hey, Randy, what should I take out there? Rather than just going, I've got this. Randy would have told me exactly what I should have taken out. And what I got chastised for, what he made fun of me for, was the fact that I thought I was more than I am. And what he told me is, man, you got to start listening and start paying attention to what we do. And so it's in those moments that older men will help the younger men. So hopefully this resonates with you. If you need help with anything, please ask below, ask in the questions. Go to the Life Outdoors Facebook page. Go to our social media and ask us. I'm more than happy to tell you. More than happy to help you get going in this. It's a big passionate project of mine to help men know who they are. All right. Until then, you guys keep living, okay?
Thanks for listening to the Life Outdoors radio show. Tune in next Sunday evening at 7 p.m. to continue to hone the primitive skills that man has always been meant to master. Hunting, Southern Oregon. The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Wake the wild within.